Hi, I'm Danger Dan Jers, the host and GM of the D&D Real Play podcast, D&D Dark. Join us on Wednesdays for an absurd, over-the-top comedy horror adventure, starring some of history's most infamous monsters.
I'm Ben Magnet. I play Mary Frankenstein, our barbarian.
I am Daniel Cruz. I am playing Imhotep the Mummy, our cleric.
I'm Jordan, and I play Larry Talbot, a lycanthropic warlock.
I am Grayson, playing Jack Griffin, the Invisible Man, the party's rogue.
I am Aaron. I play the Phantom of the Opera, our bard.
For more information, go to dndarkpodcast.com and listen to us anywhere you find podcasts.
Let's go. Master of all things tabletop. With the Paladins of Podcast. They ruin the games you love by talking rules that suck, how to build kick-ass encounters, destroy worlds, and really get your players invested. So go ahead and throw that fistful of dice at someone. Because we're going on a side quest.
How about that to start? I'll restart from when I had started talking. So I've recorded locally. Hey, Rob.
Eli, how are you doing?
Good. I just got back from California.
Yeah, that was your week-long 60-hour work trip, right?
Night shift. That was the worst part about it.
That's right. But now the Paladins of Podcast are back. And we missed last week's episode. Total error of computer technology, I'm going to say. My screen broke, and we had nothing on my laptop.
Things happen.
Yeah. Dude, the fix was a third of the cost of my computer, by the way. And it wasn't a cheap fix. Apple has totally bent me over on this.
Ooh, yeah. I don't want to think about repairing computer parts because I will never break my computer parts.
First time in 16 years. So I guess it's not bad.
Well, I've thought about, at least, especially since I was down in California, I got to chat with some old friends, but I have thought about doing a new game once a month. And I've thought about some game systems. I think I'm leaning towards Wild Sea or something a little bit more sci-fi.
That's fair. Wild Sea, chainsaw boats across the tree canopy. I remember that much.
Yep. The whole group initially, we kind of got together, and I think the rest of them are all familiar with D&D 5th edition.
Okay.
And so I believe that was initially the idea going into it. But I've floated that for this session 0, among everything else that we should discuss what game system we should play. So
You got to decide on the game system. It's kind of important. But I know that you don't generally lean towards 5th edition.
Yeah, I don't think I will ever run a game of D&D 5th edition.
Why not?
Just not a fan of the system. And
that's fair.
Yeah, and I feel like if you're going to throw a different flavor on top of it, then you might as well play a different game.
See, that's something I had mentioned not too long ago, because I love the Everyday Heroes, which is your modern-day flavor on top of 5e. It's the 5e backend. There is the Journey to Ragnarok, which is a goddamn awesome game, but again, it's built on 5e. And then Fate of the Norns, also. They have one that's built on 5e. It's great. The mechanics are there. I think they expand in the right ways.
Isn't Fate of Norns the game that uses, where you draw runes from a bag?
Yes, that was the initial game, but they have ported it over to 5e.
Why would you do that? The game was so cool. The game had these runes that you could pull, and they'd activate your abilities. I saw it being demoed when I was at one of the Gary Cons. Amazing. The game's awesome.
Yes. But to captivate more people, when you are kind of starting to lag behind, you go with the system that is most well known across the world, I guess. No fault to the developers. And I will have to say, one of the things that's been bothering the heck out of me over these last 2 weeks, I don't want to go on a tangent here, but I've been building trackers for my players, and I've been throwing them through the laser, etc., getting them all good to go. 5th edition has enough shit for every character class to track something where it makes it useful. Pathfinder 1st edition, however, absolutely does not. So some players get these full awesome-looking trackers, and other players just get 3 little health dials. Kind of stinks. Nah.
Everyone has... I think every class needs a different... Like, every class hits a different enjoyment level. Like, if you're playing a wizard, you're doing a lot of resource management about which spells to memorize and...
Right. So large trackers are good, but when you're a fighter that just has 35 frickin' bonus feats and everything is built into the character sheet mathematically, all you have to track is health points, it doesn't really mean much to have a tracker. A note card will do.
That's fair.
So, yeah, just kind of a small gripe. Anyhow,
you could spin off those. You could get one of those like health dials.
That's essentially
kind of like how, yeah.
Yeah, it's essentially what it's going to end up being. Oh, no, I'm not going to go super complicated. Eventually, Epic Table Games will try to market these to some degree, and I don't want to spend 1,000,000 hours putting together a boatload. They have to be easy enough to reproduce as mass as I can make them.
Yeah, I think my most prized GM possession is this random 3D printed like Magic the Gathering health bar tracker that clicks when you spin it.
Nice.
I was at like an Airbnb in North Carolina, and someone was like, "You want a 3D print?" And the thing's amazing. It clicks when you spin it, and so it, like when I'm running a game of Hackmaster, you can hear the seconds tick by.
Nice.
It's wonderful.
That's cool. I think my favorite prop so far is my condition and initiative tracker. So I've got one with 11 to 12 spaces on it. I can put all my players in there. I can throw my own NPCs in there. And then I've got the condition markers and the round counters for each one of everybody. So I just realized the other day it's absolutely over-engineered, by the way.
Is that like just your facing you, or is it also player facing?
Just facing me.
Do you keep track of like all the players' conditions and whatnot?
I do now.
Okay, that seems like are you going to like enforce? Like, I know you've talked a while about like letting cheaters cheat. And,
yep.
Like, if someone makes a mistake, you just let it ride.
Yeah.
So like, why track the conditions of the players if they make a conditional mistake? Like, are you going to enforce that?
Have you ever come across a scenario where you'll say something like, your character is sickened, which is the actual condition, and then all of a sudden, the healer will be like, bam, that guy's not sickened anymore, on their round?
Sure. That happens.
Yep, but this way, I don't have to use specific terminology or call anything. I can imply the penalty or know how many rounds they are experiencing certain things without letting it on. So when they are sickened or ill or poisoned, they don't know exactly what it is because that's all a little bit farther behind the screen. So it's just trying to because I want to instill a little bit more story play elements.
So like at the table, let's say, I've been affected by one of these conditions.
Yep.
Like I'm poisoned or I'm sickened. You're just gonna how do you present that to me as a player?
Usually, it would be along the lines of, you have been bitten by a snake, and then the poison courses through your veins. You're going to take the poisoned condition, and the penalties that will go with it. However,
so you're still telling them the condition?
No, I no longer have to tell them the condition. I can say, and you will suffer a penalty.
Okay, but now the player doesn't know, when they roll, let's say, does poisoned affect? It affects something, right? It affects skill checks or attack rolls, whatever.
I would tell them
whatever it affects.
I would tell them what it affects. Yes, but I'd be the one that tracks their rounds for them.
Okay.
So that way, somebody would have to actively do a heal check or investigate or figure out what is going on. They can't just know it's poison because I said it, and the only reason I said it was for player knowledge, so they can track what condition they have.
Okay. So, like, is your goal is to just like introduce more of the diagnostic skills into play?
A little bit, yeah. The idea here is that giving them the answer means they don't have to figure out the solution to the problem, because they already have the answer. And we all have these great ideas in our head, like, man, when my player is sickened, like, they're gonna have these conditions to them, and they'll have to like check to make sure their buddy's okay. But once they know that they're sickened, the guy who has the answer is just like, bam, here. And I'd like a little bit more edge to that bite.
Okay, so you want, like, even though the players have the right answer to the situation, like, you want to make sure that answer doesn't come immediately?
Yes, and I want to make sure I'm not the one providing the answer for them.
Okay, I can understand, like, not wanting to tell your players the answer.
That's really all it is. It's not for me to do the work for them. That's not me saying, hey, don't worry about your conditions, I'll track how many you got. Are you making sure that, it's already built in here, so that way I can present.
I mean, I can definitely understand that, because some element is like a part of the player's metagaming, but I think the other aspect can be trying to, show, not tell. You're trying to show the players what's happening and what they're feeling, and not necessarily explicitly tell them.
Right. And then, you can always say, they're going to ask, well, what's causing this effect? You can say, you're going to have to figure that out. That will still be an issue, but at least now I can say, hey, I have it right here. It's being tracked. You have time you're going to have to figure it out in a little bit of time.
I think that works at least for D&D, because you have, like, your 3 saves can encompass a lot of different things.
Yep. And I also have on the tracker, I've got a mark in there, so if people are playing with their death flags up, I don't have to try to search the table through everybody's soda and dice rollers and all sort of crap. I can just mark it on the tracker. So I like that too.
I like the goal. I like trying to show not tell. Although it's unfortunate that, it's a little bit extra tracking on your side.
It is, but with little rotating dials, it shouldn't be too difficult as long as I'm going through the initiative. So it's kind of nice, but it was a pain. But
it looks cool. I'm all for making trackers and all those devices.
Thank you.
They're good.
I also took one of your pieces of advice.
Oh, what'd you take?
Can you see through my camera? I know the audience can't see this, but right there, actually with the tracker that we're talking about on top, that is a desktop podium.
Oh, a desktop podium.
Yep.
I did not remember I gave that advice.
You suggested I could get a podium, so I did. I made a desktop podium. I will move my chair out of the way. I will stand up. Everything's right there, and it has taken over my DM screen, by the way. So
that is awesome. I love it. I think you don't need a DM screen if you have a podium, because all your work is right there. And do you have like a dice tray built onto it so that
nope,
you can roll dice in the front of it?
I got dice that I use, and I actually keep it off to. Generally, I'll keep it off to my left if I decide to sit down. And underneath the podium, I have access to like a storage area here. I love how I'm pointing for you. Nobody else can see it. But inside that little storage area, I'll actually keep a chest. And in that chest is where I keep all the figures and the stats for all my bad guys. So they don't even get to see them behind the screen. They're in a box underneath the screen. So,
heck yeah. Podiums are great.
It's friggin' sweet. And standing up allows me to walk around a little bit, and I do like that.
Oh yeah, when I'm playing in person, even when I'm playing online, I stand up all the time to walk around and to think, or just to give get into the character that whatever NPC I'm in.
I dig it. I do dig it quite a bit. So it's one of those things that are just kind of ways to enhance your game, I guess, to a degree.
Did you use it in your last session?
The podium and the tracker?
Or the podium, at least.
Yes. Yes.
How are you liking it?
There are some things I really like and some things that I wish I had done a little differently when I built it.
Okay. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Do any of your players stand up? And did any of your players stand up now that you were standing? Or were you normally standing a majority of the time?
I'd usually sit. I split it about half and half this time around. But when I'm standing, I'm more engaged, but they don't stand up or haven't yet. The area for them is a little bit tighter. My play space is a 12-foot by 30-foot room, 12 by 35. I got a 5 by 10. I got a 5 by 10 table, but I also have all my office stuff in here. So I got shelves on one side, desks, office space on both ends. So it's a little cramped.
I have thought about turning my quote-unquote office space into a gaming room, and I'm worried about the crampedness.
Depends on how many players you like to have and what type of table you want to do. My suggestion is hexagon.
A hexagonal table?
Yeah, kind of like a poker table.
Ooh. Actually, one of my favorite games that I played in is a Heroes game, but it was on like a moon-shaped table with like the GM in like the kind of center, 4 or 5 players fanned out. That one was great.
I've seen that. I like those style tables. I thought about building one, but the idea of space really got to me because you're now putting all players on one side. But in a space like mine, I could put my space closer to the wall and they could have the entire backspace, which wouldn't be horrible. But I generally play with more than just 4 or 5 players. So if I scaled down my campaigns, absolutely need a smaller table.
I do prefer like circular or hexagonal style tables for everything but setting up my own. Like whenever I do that as a GM, I feel like I need like a side table or something just to set up all. So I mean, I like to be surrounded by the books that I have, and I mean, I roll dice in front with the players. So that's why I love being in the circular table, because then it feels like we're all, as we should all be equal, like in telling the story. But then I need all my stuff on the side, and the papers to consult. Yep.
Now see, that's like, I know that again recording audio for you guys, but the podium itself for my table is actually on this small green side table, so I can keep it off to my left, so it's not blocking me from my players when I'm sitting down, because I can still see over it while I'm sitting. But this way, there's no barrier between them and I when I sit down. Usually, a lot of my stuff, when I have the podium up and I'm standing, I still have a table with my shit to the side to the left. So, no matter what, I always have a bag of tricks to my left. So,
I think every time I think back of an old memory of like a gaming story to tell, I think there's always a number of players standing whenever it happens. So.
Yeah, and I've played at tables where I've stood as a player, and I've played with other players who are standing, because we have got to move because it's an intense scenario. I've got one player in my Twisted Justice campaign I think is going to get to that point. So he's an intense player. He's all in all the time. I really dig it. Dead Space.
How's your last games gone?
Not bad. So I'm facing a small problem in my one campaign.
This is all about talking about problems. Let's talk about your problem.
Sure. I've got 2 to 3 players who enjoy the game. They like the game, but they're less involved than I think I want them to be, and they're less involved than I think they want to be. They just don't seem to do a whole lot. They kind of follow along and roll dice when they have to.
Question.
Yes.
When are they not involved? Are they not involved in combat? Are they not involved in, narrative scenes, skill challenges?
Both. they're just kind of floating around no matter what. And it's not dragging anybody down, but I can't imagine it's much fun for them. And then one of my players is not he's not the kind of player who is hogging the limelight. He's not one of the main character syndrome type of players, but he's incredibly invested. And one of the problems every DM faces is when somebody is highly invested, you still have to invest in every other player. You can't just invest in one person. So in my attempts to keep getting everybody else invested, they will default to essentially party face. And it's kind of a bummer. I'm trying to get them more involved, but they just keep passing it off.
How often do you split the party?
I don't, and they choose not to. They always choose not to. Anytime they offer an opportunity to do so, I'm all for it. But I have not forced it.
Why not?
Generally, they fall apart as a group, if that makes sense. Like, they get really lost. They don't know what to do. It feels like if somebody's not making decisions for them, they don't know what to do.
I mean, personally, that sounds like a quote-unquote player training problem.
I can agree with that.
I mean, I think as a GM, if I'm trying to get my players more comfortable with something, either a mechanic or a way of thinking or something, I will like softball it. So, you know, I'll force a situation in where those rules, or I mean, it is railroading, but it's railroading with a goal to have more open gameplay in the future.
No, that's fair.
If players know that they can do something, like, I mean, players will always want to stick together in dangerous or uncertain times.
Mm-hmm.
So if you give them, you know, if you either force them into a situation where they're broken up, but then all the situations are very easy to deal with individually, then they'll be more inclined to break apart in situations they can handle.
That's true. That's true. And with the way the party just went, they are in a scenario and situation where splitting the party was not a bad idea or an incorrect possibility. So
you could I mean, a fairly easy one is a teleporting trap where both parties get attacked. You know, but half the group goes through the teleporting portals, somehow it closes, and then both sides get ambushed.
See, they just went through a hidden door in a cave system, and they're walking down. I told them combat would be where we start this next game, and all of a sudden, there just has to be a shift in the mountainous activities. Small cave-in, split party.
There you go.
So, I think I like the way that'll work out.
Yeah, and then when you get farther and farther, you can put timers or, switching between groups. I mean, people always say splitting the party is bad, but minorly splitting the party, I think, can be great for, like working especially when both groups are engaged, especially by something that can apply to both of them.
Mm-hmm.
Then they all feel like they're working towards the same goal, and then you can, by switching back and forth, the pacing. You can push the pacing and, danger, stress.
Yeah. Now, there is one thing that Potato had done that I had not seen before, and he intentionally split the party. And when he did so, he kept everybody in initiative order, and he went around the table constantly. Even though we weren't doing combat, it was, what are you doing? Resolve. Next person, what are you doing? Resolve. So that way, even though the party was split, we were all still active every minute to 2 minutes as he went around the table. So it wasn't just dedicated to one group for 5 minutes and then switch. I really loved how he did that. I thought it was ingenious.
Doesn't sound too groundbreaking for me.
It's really not, but it's not something I had experienced before.
Yeah, I think it can be very useful, especially like if everyone is on that time scale. But I think the reality is that also sometimes people will do things that last forever or take an extremely long amount of time.
Yeah. But again, when you get back to them, you just either they're still doing the same thing or, it's just you're checking in on progress at that point if it's taking too long for them. That way you're just touching base with every player, even though their character might be taking an exorbitant amount of time to do something.
Okay, yeah. I think checking in with the players is probably a good idea.
Yeah, I dig it. I thought it was incredible. So, backtracking all the way back. You mentioned Wild Seas or more of a sci-fi game.
Yeah.
Sci-fi game in mind?
There's Wild Seas. I'm a big fan of the Star Wars Edge of the Empire system, so I might try my hand at running some more of that. And the great part about that is there's some absolutely wonderful modules that are pre-written for it.
Mm-hmm.
Makes it super easy, low prep, and pretty easy to get into.
Okay.
Because almost everyone knows Star Wars. We talked about Edge of the Empire.
Yep, that's based off of the. Is that? Hold on.
The Genesis.
That's right. I was going to say Genesis. I was like, wait, no. Fantasy Flight is what we talked about. That's the D6 system. This is not the Genesis. This is not the D6 Genesis system. So.
And then there's also Alternity that I really want to try out. So
we talked about that one briefly. So
I think Wild Sea has the lowest ceiling, and so I'm probably going to push that one fairly strongly. Because especially, I think if you dibble dabble outside of your comfort zone, it'll just. I mean, it's a gateway. It's a gateway game. So
right.
If you dibble dabble, and I especially like Wild Sea because it's a narrative system, but it's got a lot of the kind of crutches of very similar marginal success games.
Sure.
So I think it's got just enough structure that it can kind of appeal to people coming from games with a lot of structure, like D&D, and it can appeal from people that are from ultralight games. So it's a good mix.
That's fair. And kind of that out of your comfort zone, I'd like to go back to a small topic that we had. I want to say in one of our last episode or two, I mentioned the idea of zero initiative, no initiative based combat. And you had asked me, how does that work? And I will tell you, I figured it out. I know how it works based on other systems, and I can tell you what my problem is.
Okay, give me your no initiative system.
All right. So in a no initiative system, even though everybody is telling you what they want to do and you kind of resolve the actions there, the idea is that you narrate it in a way that makes sense to the story. So while everybody's actions are resolved, they are not narrated in the way that they are resolved. So if it goes, let's say, person 1, 2, and 3, tell me what they're doing. We roll the dice to make sure I know what balances are where, and then I narrate it how it makes sense. So it might be person 2, then person 3, then person 1, if that's how it narratively makes sense. So everybody is telling me what they want to do. I choose what order to listen to them in, but I narrate it story-driven. So that's how the zero initiative works.
So I would like to bring back, my one question is, when a player declares what they're doing, when do you tell them the resolution of it? Is that only in the narrative description?
Yes.
So player 1 attacks a creature.
Yep.
You just say, you've done 10 damage.
So.
And then player 2 might also declare, I'm attacking the creature. It does however much damage. Player 3 declares they're doing something else. Player 1 could have killed that creature just outright.
Yep. If that's the case, if player 1 could have killed that player completely outright, obviously, when it comes back in narration, that would go at the end.
So, what if both players do enough damage to kill a creature outright?
Think about it like a tandem attack where one of them's axe does enough damage to push them back forcefully into the next individual, and their axe completely slices them in two. However you choose to narrate it, where they both have a powerful success in that murder. I'm sorry, victory.
Well, does that feel like you're robbing players of their impact?
So this is where I found my issue with it. Because where I see it is no, but the way it feels when I do it, yes. So I'm so ingrained with the idea of initiative that it comes down to resolution happens immediately. And because my Infinium system is using contested roles, I know the result beforehand, and I will tell them what goes on. But then I'm still supposed to narrate as a whole, kind of like that scenario, that scene. And that's difficult for me to do. It's outside of the comfort zone.
So when, in your no initiative system, when does the enemy act?
Now, this is something that I was trying to debate as well. There are certain systems that utilize a GM never really acts. They are generally on the defensive or always reacting. However, in decent systems that I have found, it is an every other scenario. So whoever begins by acting is on the defensive next round. So if as a DM I have an NPC that will initiate an attack on the party, I initiate, they respond, and then they turn around and they are immediately responding, and then I am defending.
So it's a you go, resolve, I go, resolve, you go, resolve, I go, resolve.
Right. And
Okay.
in this case, because we're talking about you and I, you as an Eli would be representative of the party. So if there were three of you, the three of you would go.
Yeah.
So it's different, and I don't know if I like holding the narrative description till the end. It feels more natural to describe what happens after the resolution roll that I make, because in the system that I'm building, we use contested rolls. So I have to know who's successful and how I'm going to narrate that.
I think it's a little, I don't know. I think the issue with having everyone like declare simultaneously is that you're not going to be able to end up in how do you assist another player, if that makes sense? Like, because it sounds like the resolution doesn't happen until the end. So if character 1 helps character 2 and character 2 to do something, like when does that bonus not take effect immediately?
Now that would be a system specific question. So each system that utilizes this style of no initiative kind of handles those a little bit differently. But it all comes down to however it is described, the action from the players wants to take place versus how the game master decides to narrate the scenario as a whole. So if player 2 says, I'm going to use my action to assist player 1 in his action, then when it's narrated back, that is taken into effect.
Okay.
Does
player 2 being assisted by player 1 get the assist bonus when they roll?
Yes.
Okay.
So that the mechanics, like the dice rolling and everything to determine outcome happens as mechanics normally would. But the narrated description, like the answer, really comes back in the narration, which is a whole. And that's, like I said, it's weird. Like, it's totally weird.
You don't think that might break down when you get to large number of players?
It seems like the key number for the games that are successful that utilize this sit between 4 and 6. Okay. So they're generally, I would say, smaller party style games, which is fair, makes sense. And
4 to 6 is only a small party for you who runs with 11 people at a table.
7. I got 7.
Sorry, 13.
Oh, nice. 7, 13, 11. We're all good. But, I mean, 4 to 5 is a decent-sized amount of people to manage. And I can do it with 2, no problem. 3 and 4, it starts to get a little bit more difficult because it feels so much like that initiative rounds that I'm used to from games like D&D or Pathfinder. So I'm looking to figure out a better way to either manage it without having to roll initiative or just figure out a better combat system. But I like my combat system so far.
Well, you should, the best way to test it is by playtesting it.
Yep. I've gone through 2, and I've figured out where a few of my small, I don't want to say pitfalls, but small hang-ups are.
Every playtest you learn something.
Yes. And have you gone through and started to build a system at all?
No, not really. I have not. I've made minor systems or tried to make tweaks, but I haven't tried to make my own game system.
Okay. What I've found as I'm working with a few other people every now and then to bounce my ideas off of after I've got something cohesive, not good, just cohesive. They like to really apply knowledge from the real world that they know into rules, and I have to keep telling them nope. We're not applying all of that. We're not going to have 1,000 different rules for every scenario. We're simplifying. We're shutting down, 60 different possible techniques and reasons you can use this skill for that skill. We got to constrain it, and then we work with that. That's probably the hardest thing for certain people, I think, is to grasp the idea that to make it easy to flow, we cannot include every possible real physic.
Yeah, I think that's an important... I very much enjoy crunchy games, which have a million rules for every situation, and I also understand and love more narrative games, where one skill or ability will cover a wide variety of situations.
And that's where Infinium is right now. It's more narrative. I think I had mentioned
Is that the name of your game?
The name of the system? Yeah, Infinium. Infinium. And after a little bit of research where I was going to make it more of a just broad style toolkit, I am simply just going to theme it instead.
Oh, thank you.
Yep. You're welcome. You're welcome. And I will be able to retheme for additional rules or settings as necessary.
What's your theme?
I'm starting off with Arthurian fantasy. So the idea is to, I mentioned balancing a little bit heavier between melee and casters, but casting magic is difficult and rewarding. So that is kind of the crux of the magic system there, and melee is simple and straightforward.
Is there any works that are particularly inspiring to your theme?
This is really, really funny, but the BBC show Merlin is the one that I continuously think about when I'm putting together certain ideas. And other than that, it's just what I some of my favorite pieces of information about Merlin and magic itself. I've always kind of hated the fact that magic is not a big deal. It's super easy to cast. It's super easy to do. But magic should be hard. It should be complicated. It should be dangerous. There should be effects to magic that are unknown. It shouldn't be something we can just snap our fingers and do. We have to put effort into it. So
I'm excited because my Hackmaster players they're getting to that level where the spell volatility is high enough that casting without boosting spells, or and their spells are powerful enough that they could force spell failures just by casting them. So we might start seeing some dangerous situations when they start overcasting in tough situations.
See, that's exciting. It makes me want to ask you your opinion on this, and I think you're gonna be okay with it. So, in Infinium, the way it's built for my spells is your spells have categorized by like a spell origin or spell background. So if you have an Arcana magic ability, you would have Arcana-based spells. So I'm just going to call one Arcane Bolt for simplicity, okay?
Sure.
We use a die pool system, which requires successes versus failures, or success conditions that you have to meet. Very similar in die pool systems. So the modified portion of this means that you buy up in die steps, which is increasing your amount of die success conditions per die. Arcane Bolt requires 1 success condition, and if you aren't trained in it by any means, you have to roll your 1d6 and get a 6 for that condition to be met. That's difficult, as it is. There are ways to get auto successes and still roll, so you will be over, which is good, but once you get to a point where you have the opportunity for multiple successes and you have higher spells that require more successes, the chance of failure also becomes greater. So it's more dangerous to cast higher powered spells.
That checks out.
And I really like that idea. So what are your thoughts on the initial wording so far?
Yeah, is there something bad that happens if you fail?
Yeah. So if you critically fail, which is get 0 successes on a spell that requires 2 or 3 successes, for example, the spell will overload or backfire, and you take the damage instead.
Is that what happens regardless? What if you cast a buff spell, bull strength?
Yes. Even if it was a buff spell, it would backfire by some degree.
So what does that backfire mean?
I don't have certain effects related to buff spells yet. Right now, I'm just working on the damage aspects.
Okay, so essentially, if you fail to cast a spell, then the effects of the spell happen to you in reverse.
Sure, but I mean, if you're a caster, having bull strength may not be super beneficial, but hell,
the failure that would be you lose strength, right?
Could be, but a caster wouldn't have a lot of it anyway, and it put him in a perilous situation.
Is that the goal? You're having spells do damage to them.
I don't think I want to
putting them in a perilous situation.
I don't think I want to kill them by that means. But then again, I don't know exactly what they would.
How far are you willing to go? Do you want spell failure to deplete their resources? Do you want it to kill them? Do you want it to burn out their ability to cast spells?
I want it to be threatening.
But not kill them.
If it kills them, I want it to be their choice by pushing the envelope. I don't want it to be dangerous enough to outright kill them.
Okay. So is your do damage to them some sort of scalar or some sort of set values? Is it based on the spell? Because it certainly seems like spells could do more damage.
Yep.
You could kill them in one shot.
Every spell will have a set value. So instead of having damage dice to roll additionally on top of, we're going to do set values for a lot of things. So hit points will be determined based on ability scores or the ability score pool, and then set damage will be based on everything else, for every weapon, etc. There are certain things that will increase that damage, such as experience and mastery, or a different type of weapon may add a property to it. Yep. But in general, for example, a longsword will do 4 damage. Plain and simple, if you hit with your success, it's going to do 4 damage. That way we don't have to keep adding additional rolling of dice, because we're already using a die pool system that's modified with successes and contended rolls. So
it seems like a good decision.
It's trying to make it simple. I love crunchy. I love a lot of things going on, but I've already got a lot of dice going into this, which is why I limited it to 3d10 at first. And
everyone has a lot of dice.
Yes, but I'm looking at different dice pools for every ability score, and adding additional dice based on the weapon that you're using makes it just keeps adding dice. I'm trying to keep certain things simple while enhancing the entertainment value of other things.
Roll a bunch of dice.
I like it, but I realized I don't want to roll 100 d6s at one time anymore.
Yeah, that's fair. That's why you buy the tiny little boxes. A whole cube of 36.
Maybe maybe I'll eliminate dice rolling in general, and I'll just say everybody gets a box of these, and you throw them at each other. And if it hurts, it's damage. If it doesn't hurt, they defend it.
You know, I think this is a great idea. You should patent this.
They had a drinking game similar where if you failed your save, you had to drink, and then the more you drank, eventually you'd get to the point where you had to slap the guy next to you if he didn't drink or drank. So
wow, wait, involving D&D, you failed your save.
It was a fantasy-based drinking game. I remember coming across when I went to Origins once. It was next to the booth that did the Dragon Tavern game, which is also
Drunk Quest.
No, I don't think so. But again, this was years ago, so I don't remember the name at this point. But yeah, it was interesting to say the least. Made me grateful I don't drink very often.
Yeah, I think I have Drunk Quest, which is kind of like Munchkin.
Okay.
But drinking.
Nice.
Huh.
I do your dad's micro shots count.
Time. What was that?
I asked if in Drunk Quest do your dad's micro shots count?
I think we'd probably make him do as many micro shots equal to a shot. But you know, if someone wants to do micro shots or take less, whatever, let him participate.
Fair. So, honestly, this is really what I got in me for tonight, and we're on the mark, my man.
All right.
So,
well,
I really
make some stuffed pasta shells.
Dude, that sounds tasty.
I hope it is.
Yeah, let me know. I'm gonna have coffee. Stay up all night. Any words of advice or things to end this episode with for our fans?
You know, make sure to eat healthy and get exercise. It can make you a lot happier. And see the sun.
I will second that. I work in a place with no windows, and winter is the worst because it's dark when I get in, it's dark when I get out. And it's kind of like prison. So get the vitamin D, see the sun, and keep the healthiest work-life balance you can, guys. Check us out at Epic.
Maybe if you describe your work like prison, you should think about other jobs.
I am, now that I've been injured and I'm on the recovery. Like, look at my hand move, bro. I can do certain things with it now. I can't flip anybody off yet, but it's getting there.
This is baby steps.
Right?
Just flip him the bird.
The whole bird. If I do that, I got a Finding Nemo hand. It's my lucky wing. So, all right, guys, check us out at epictablegames.com or on Facebook. We will see you next week.
Okay, new intro. We've changed the name, and we're still using the word paladin. Paladin. I mean, it hasn't been used in the English language in about 200 years, but okay.